for you to be a smooth wrestler as you were, you had so much personality, and you always had some stick. I mean, from the music to the flamboyant costumes to the Nature Boy-esque type of flow going. Like you always had something, and it's very rare. Can you explain where that came from? Where that flair, that fervor for being at the up front came from?
Oh, wow. Good question, Mark. Man, I always knew you were a special talent. I didn't know you had these journalistic powers nowadays. But no, the thing about it is, as I said, I grew up in the business, and, I was a wrestling fan long before I got in the ring, and I was blessed to get to be a part and be around wrestling, in middle school and high school. And, my favorite wrestler growing up as a kid was Jackie Fargo. So the Strut, with all due respect, is I don't imitate Ric Flair or Buddy Rogers, but the fabulous Jackie Fargo. And he was very flamboyant. But, week in and week out in the Memphis territory, we wrestled in Memphis on Mondays and Louisville's on Tuesdays, Evansville Wednesday, Nashville on Saturday, and a spot show on Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. But we're in weekly towns, and so you really had to capture the audience's imagination. And one thing I learned day one when I got in this business is you better evolve. Because the best example that I have as it relates to my career is the Double J. When I came on the scene in 1993, had a certain slant to it, but then 5 years later, the Attitude Era was in full force. And you had to evolve into that, and then you go into the WCW era of my career. It was a different era, and then the early days of TNA, and then just as things go, I went down to Mexico since 2004, and there's a little bit different slant there. So I always knew that you had to adapt, and I always prided myself and tried to have a good match with everybody and be diversified and be able to work their style as opposed to only my style. So I took a lot of pride in the early days of adapting and evolving.
So you said you started off as a kid. I think you were a referee at one time when you first started, weren't you?
I did. The summers I played basketball, but in my summers, but when I wasn't playing ball, I refereed, set up the ring, sold concessions, sold programs. Did a little of everything, but no, I refereed summers, and after my senior year in high school, I did some refereeing, and then that's how, that April 6th of 1986 is when I had my first match. So March of 86, I was refereeing on TV, and Buddy Landell and Superstar Bill Dundee attacked me, and as they say, I was off to the races. But refereed, and playing, I still to this day have vivid memories of getting to referee, not just a match, not a special referee, but I was just another ref in the early days in the summers. And man, that's a great way to learn because you're right there on top of the action, and you get to sort of feel it as a close bystander. But to answer your question, Mark, I started off as a referee.
You talked about being a third generation wrestler. How important was it for you in your development and where you've gone in your life to have that in your favor?
Well, a lot of people have said it. I certainly can attest to it. I think Jim Cornette was one of the first to say it, or not the first, but he said it probably more articulate than me. But being my father being a promoter and my grandmother being a promoter was the biggest blessing I had, and also the biggest curse I had getting into this business. But as I look back over my 32-year career, without question, it goes without saying, without Christine Jarrett, my grandmother, taking a second job in the 1940s selling wrestling tickets, there would be no Jeff, in the Hall of Fame. There would be no Jeff Jarrett in a career. And likewise for my father, who wrestled and then he promoted. So I got to be around it. That's sort of where, like I said earlier, I was a fan long before I was a wrestler. So that's sort of where the genesis of my career, getting into this business and watching it And from an early age, I got to be around it, and I was really, really mesmerized at an early age at all the things that go on outside the ring, not just setting up the ring and being a part of that, but, the concession stand and selling merchandise, and then, the television production side of things, and watching the guys, back in the mid-'80s when the guys would come to my dad's house and he had a studio set up and they would do their promos and getting to hear them talk about the same match that's just going to take place Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and watching the guys, the business side of things, but watching the art of a promo. And, when back in those days, you had 2 minutes and the guys had to hit it right on their mark. And that's when you really, really cut your teeth. And it's no different than, it is different, but the same analogy is, when a brain surgeon becomes a great brain surgeon, that means he's been in the operating room an awful lot of times. And in his early years, he did an awful lot of observing. And then, he little by little, but you don't start out operating on brains. You start out, at a very, very early age, and so that's how I got lucky. I got blessed to be around just the ins and the outs. And, I've told this story and when I see, and last night it came to my mind, seeing the Ultimate Warrior and the Warrior Award going in. I can remember the very first time that I saw Jim Hellwig. It was Thanksgiving Day, 1985, and him and a guy named Steve Borden, who, progressed into a guy we know, Sting, who's also in the Hall of Fame. They drove cross country and they arrived at my dad's house Thanksgiving Day of 1985. And I was up in my room on Thanksgiving morning, and those guys come walking up to the door to meet my dad, and they're going to start in the territory. That's the first time I got to lay eyes on, at that time, Jim and Steve. But so I was blessed to be around that side of the business and got to learn from that side of the business. And really I got to see all facets of it. So being in a wrestling family, Mark, to answer your question, and I know I got long-winded if you can believe that, but no, it is a huge blessing and a huge part of it. And I've said it to the NBC Sports guys who broke the interview. They asked me any closing remarks, and I said, yes. My closing remarks is I can't wait for April 6th because I'm going to be accepting this award on behalf of my entire family. Wow. And there's several family members that are in this business or have been in this business, and I'm really accepting it on. I'm the lucky one that gets to get on the stage, but I'm accepting on behalf of my family.
Jeff, you mentioned names like Bill Dundee and Buddy Landell, and I get chills just even hearing those names, growing up and watching those guys wrestle. And like you just said, you've been a part of this world, and you're a young man, and you've been now a part of this world for 32 years, and, seeing like the wrestling, from Memphis, and all you have to do is check out that documentary, Memphis Heat, about how great that promotion was, and being a part of WCW and being, a huge part of TNA and the WWF. Is there a favorite moment or a favorite time in your career? Oh, wow. That, again, I've said this on multiple interviews. I'm not a rearview mirror guy. I always like to look forward and look where we're going and really never look on the past because, what have you done for me lately? Is this type of business or this type of world we live in? And also, again, I just like to look forward. But this Hall of Fame situation has made me, bump the brakes, look in the rearview mirror, and sort of reflect on things. And I've been asked that question. It's really, really hard to say a favorite era because all of them are special. I worked for 7 years in my father's promotion and went to Texas and went to Japan and Puerto Rico, and then I went to the WWF and WCW from 93 to 01 and then, 02 till, rather recently, ups and downs. But from 02 to basically 2010, I was obviously my professional life and personal life was consumed by TNA and then the ups and downs of that. So, I've got four, you could probably break my career down into four stages. But, when the Double J era, and this is something that, longtime fans, if there are any out there, Jeff Jarrett, remember for 7 years I was a babyface. I was a good guy. So the first time that I was ever the heel, the bad guy, was the Double J character. And the early days of the Double J character, and when me and Rhodey hooked up, there was definitely some magic and a lot of fun in the series of matches with Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall and
some tag matches of me and Sean against Scott and Razor, and it was that I definitely, as it relates to the Hall of Fame, reflect very fondly on that era for sure.
Jeff, this is one of those that I was able to drive in Memphis, in that territory, and you left out Carrollton, Kentucky. And did you ever drive in any territory that was longer than those Memphis drives?
Well, I guess it's I'm not the best historian, but from 88 to 91, we worked in the Von Erich. My father did a partnership with Kevin and Kerry for about 3 years. And Mark, I got to tell you, you drive from San Angelo back to Dallas, that's a haul. There's some hauls.
Man.
The great state of Texas, which you know better than I do, but there are some long trips there from 100 miles west of San Antonio back to Dallas.
Yes, it's 8 hours. 8 hours from Beaumont to El Paso.
Yeah, you definitely get to see the sunrise on those trips. But when I think back on the trips and how the business has evolved, a lot of times the trips were the classroom. If you want to give an analogy to a student or someone getting into this business or getting into any business, the car was the classroom for a lot of us, certainly in that era. And nowadays, the guys are planes and trains and that kind of stuff. But no, I learned an awful lot. I can't tell you that I enjoyed the long trips, but you definitely all you could do, and obviously it's back before. If we did it now and had to drive those trips, nobody'd say a word because they'd be on their phone. But back in those days, you operated off payphones, so you didn't have that, and you didn't have satellite radio like we're blessed with right now. You tried to find stations, or you would listen. God, I'm really dating myself. You listen to cassettes, but there was just so much more interaction, and we talked about the match we just had, or a match coming up, or an idea, or a crazy idea. All those kind of things. So, the road miles that we put on back in the day, I can't say that I cherished every mile by any stretch, but it was certainly a learning experience and part of the business in that era.
And some of those trips were like butt chewings. I got a lot of those. I got a lot of those long 3-hour, 4-hour butt chewings. Like, why would you do that? Yes, sir.
I did Lawler's podcast the other week. Last week, and I was reflecting on that, and Lawler didn't, I told him, I said, you probably don't realize how much I listened, but I certainly can remember many a time a young talent come through the curtain, and his ass got chewed out the rest of the night, and Lawler wasn't going to be riding with him, but he certainly let them know till they got out the door. Why in the hell? Mark, you've heard him.
Yeah.
Sure.
I've been a recipient of some of those.
That's what hadn't we all?
Jeff, you mentioned that you don't like to look back, and now is the time to reflect because you're going into the Hall of Fame. But here's somebody that's been amazingly busy, especially over the last few years, and not just in the world of wrestling, but, you like to share your faith as well. You did The Masked Saint, which I thought was a terrific movie. So you're always keeping yourself busy. So once you get past April and being a part of the WWE Hall of Fame, what's next for Jeff Jarrett?
I could not, there's no secret of 2017, both professionally and personally, was an up and down year, probably more downs than up. But 2018 certainly started off with a bang, and I've got some international projects. People that really study the business realize just how hot the business is in Europe, in the Middle East. It's exploding, certainly in India, and it's been a staple of Japan for years and years and years, but all of Southeast Asia now. So I've got some international projects that I'm super excited at. And that if you're asking me right now, that's currently what I'm laser focused on.
And you gotta give me and our audience a Mark Henry story.
I
don't have a specific story, but here's something that I'll say that I often made me chuckle is that, and Mark, I may be wrong, but I think you had been wrestling 3 or 4 years in the late 90s. I'm not sure. I think 96 is when you broke in. don't hold me to it. But I know you weren't a seasoned vet like you are now back then. But anyway, I can remember the interactions. And Dave, you got to tell me, because I'm obviously not in the studio. You got to tell me if I get the reaction that I think I'm going to get. Okay. I think Mark's going to have this real big grin and chuckle when I say this. But the interactions between Mark and Owen Hart, when Owen would just on purpose try to confuse you, like, what did he just tell me? Owen would just be talking gibberish or silliness or nothing that made sense. And not just Mark, but me and anybody else in the room, we'd say, like, what is he talking about? And Owen would try to carry on the conversation with Mark, and it was fun because at that time, like I said, Mark was not brand new, but he was certainly a younger guy in the business. So, and
I believe everything he said.
Mark, do you remember those days when Owen
I do. I remember.
Silly?
I remember Owen saying, "Hey man, I'm starting to try to work out a little bit more, and I want to build up my shank. Like, can you? What exercises?" And I said, "Wait, what's the shank? Where is that?" And he's like, "Over here by the forward." And I was like, "The forward? What the hell is a forward?" And he was like, "The forward next to the shank." And he would just make up stuff, and he's just like, "Oh my God, this dude." He actually got me in the ring. We had a match in Dallas, and he did the flying toe hold on me because I do whatever he said. And he was like, "Wait, put your arms out and wave them like you're flying." And then he hit me, and I hit him back, and he stepped on my feet, and he's like, "Okay, now wave your arms real wild." And I started waving my arms. He's like, "You're flying," and I'm like. God, Lee, Owen, like you wanted to kill him, but then
but you couldn't.
But you couldn't. It was like he's the only guy that I ever seen that was able to even get Vince like that. Like he would do stuff to Vince that would have got everybody else fired.
Jay, did I get the reaction that I thought that when I said the interactions between Mark Henry and Owen were priceless.
Well, Jeff, just so you know, like there was a smile from ear to ear from Mark Henry, and you definitely got the reaction that you were probably looking for.
That was my brother, man.
Oh yeah, we had, and during that time, that's what I'm saying is we had traveling the roads, not just in the ring, but that was a part of that era that, me and Mark and D'Lo, just that during that time, we were on the road every night together, and some of my fondest memories. Of that time was Mark and Owen's conversations that meant absolutely nothing. Owen would get everybody in the dressing room scratching their head.
Well, from here on out, especially after April, whenever we introduce Jeff Jarrett to the show, we're going to have to say WWE Hall of Famer. And Jeff, congratulations. You've always been a friend of the show. You've always come on with us. And listen, congratulations. And I can't wait to see you WrestleMania weekend.
Appreciate it, Dave. I really do. I really appreciate you having me on. Obviously, like I said at the very beginning, I'm no stranger to this show, and I appreciate all the support you guys have given me over the years. So can't wait to see you in New Orleans, April 6th. Can't get here quick enough.
All right, man. I can't wait to see you, man. You have a good day.
Thanks, Mark. You have a great day as well.